Here are the finalized permits, Mr. Kim. We did try to reach you, but since we didn't hear back, we assumed the date was agreeable.
Therefore, the Homeowners Association agrees to the terms set forth herein.
It's okay, Mom. Just sign right here.
To the beautiful couple and the reclaiming of our community. Cheers!
I came home after 2 weeks on the road to find tent stakes hammered through my grandfather's rose garden. Not near it, through it. Steel spikes driven straight into beds he had tended for 40 years, crushing stems he had cultivated since before I was born. Diesel fumes from 3 generator trucks hung thick in the air. A catering crew moved through my backyard like they owned it, arranging tables and stringing lights between my grandfather's oak trees. A woman I recognized from the neighborhood newsletter walked over with a stack of papers and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Community use clause," she said, waving the documents at me like they settled everything. "Your property has been designated for an approved community event. My name is Daniel Cho. 6 months ago, I inherited my grandfather's 1940 craftsman home in Maple Brook Hills. This was where I spent every summer as a kid learning to care for his rose garden and listening to him talk about standing your ground without losing your dignity. I had moved in thinking the suburbs meant quiet streets and big trees. I had been wrong about that from the first week. Mara Whitfield had been HOA president for 8 years. She drove a white BMW with vanity plates that read, "Hey, Boss," and treated the neighborhood like a personal kingdom. She had fined Mr. Desai for brass peacock decorations that had been in his yard for 15 years. She had reported the Brown family's children to child services for playing basketball in their own driveway. 2 weeks after I moved in, she fined me $50 because my mailbox was the wrong shade of white. When I asked whether it mattered, she turned it into $200. What I found out standing in my ruined backyard was that Mara had charged her daughter's future in-laws $8,000 for venue rental of my property. $8,000 deposited into something she called the HOA Special Events Fund that no other resident knew existed. She had sold my grandfather's garden without asking me, without telling me, without a single word. I called an emergency HOA meeting that night. The community center was packed with Mara's supporters. When I stood up with my property deed, she looked up from her binder with a patience that felt designed to humiliate. "The covenant is clear, dear," she said. "Perhaps you should have read it before moving in." I went home and read every page. What I found on page 47 of my title insurance report stopped me cold. My property had never been legally brought under the HOA's authority. The original 1987 subdivision plan had excluded my lot due to a separate water easement. My grandfather had never signed the HOA covenant because he was never required to. Every fine Mara had issued me, every violation notice, every threatening letter, all of it was completely meaningless. She had no jurisdiction over my property whatsoever. My attorney filed a formal challenge the next morning and demanded full financial transparency on the Special Events Fund. Mara responded by escalating. A city inspector appeared, an old friend of hers, citing violations on my grandfather's 30-year-old workshop shed. She organized neighbors to monitor my visitors. She contacted one of my clients and implied I was mentally unstable. Then my security cameras caught her at 2 a.m. with a spray can writing "Community Menace" across my garage door. By the time we walked into that Saturday wedding setup with a copy of the settlement agreement, Mara had accumulated harassment charges, perjury charges from a false restraining order, and $45,000 in documented embezzlement from HOA funds over 3 years. Jacob, my attorney, read the settlement terms aloud in front of 200 wedding guests. Public apology to every person she had harassed, full repayment of every stolen dollar, immediate resignation, 5-year ban from any leadership role. Mara refused. Then Brianna, her daughter, still in her wedding dress, took the pen from her mother's shaking hand. "Mom," she said quietly, "please, just sign it." The only sound was pen on paper. The crowd exhaled like they had been holding their breath for years. Federal agents arrived as the ink dried. Mara was led away past the rose beds her tent stakes had torn through that morning. The wedding continued, under my terms, on my land. That evening I replanted what I could save of my grandfather's roses. He used to say stand firm with kindness, but never enable cruelty. It took security cameras and a court order and Brianna's quiet courage for me to understand what he meant. The roses came back the following spring, every single one.